Hey folks, I am Steve Wexler, and today on Chart Chat, we are going to be discussing a summer of book writing and intense visualization debates. Hope you enjoy it. Hey folks, I am Steve Wexler. I am Chief Chart Looker at Data Revelations and one of now 4 authors on an upcoming book. I'm going to pass things over to Jeff Schaefer, who will introduce himself. I've already introduced him, but I'll say what he does.
Jeff Schaefer here from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a professor at the University of Cincinnati, teaching data visualization and AI and other fun classes, and co-author on the book with these folks. Andy?
Yeah, I'll go next. I'm Andy Cockgreave. What am I? Tableau's Chief Data Evangelist. I don't know. I'll make up the job title every month, it seems. It's my 13-year anniversary at Tableau next week. Holy cow. But great to be here with you all. And I'll pass it all to Amanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda McCulloch. I am a health data visualization designer based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am also the executive director of the Global Data Visualization Society and very excited as a public health person about one of these topics in particular for today. So let's dive in, Steve.
I am very excited about today's session that has emerged at it's going to be fun. So here is what we're up to today. We're going to start by looking at population pyramids, and here's a gem of a visualization from Will Sutton. We have a lot of opinions on these. Next will be a scenario from our upcoming book. This is also a gem of a dashboard, this one from Kevin Flaherledge. We want to show you just how much work it takes into honing one of these things and the discussions in the book. And speaking of discussions, my fellow authors from time to time drive me crazy. And I know I drive them crazy, but nothing has driven me as nuts as this particular item. And here's just a small portion of the Slack discussion around it as something that Andy wanted to get into the first book. He's going to get it into this book. And the intensity of discussions around something that's only going to take maybe a half or 3/4 of a page, but I hope you find it as engaging and enlightening as certainly I have, and I think my fellow hosts of Chart Chat and fellow authors have. In any case, we're going to go right into population pyramids, and I'm going to back off and hand this over to Jeff. Jeff, take over.
Well, I'm going to start that it really came about from this viz of the day that we saw, and I just love this visualization. I loved everything about it. I loved the color and the design and all of the things about it, but it sparked a conversation about population pyramids, and so we started talking about those. Interesting enough, a couple days later, another viz of the day, and sure enough, it in the bottom right-hand corner had some more population pyramids, and so we were again discussing that. We had discussed population pyramids. I believe it was the very first episode of Chart Chat before Andy and Amanda even joined us. Steve and I talked about it, and then we had Chris Love on the following episode, and so we thought we would revive that topic. There's been some great work in the community. The first one, I think you said Will Sutton did that. Mark Reed did these last two, the Singapore and the South Korea were done by Mark Reed, and they're just beautiful. I love these as well. So quick discussion on population pyramid. Best I can tell, goes back to 1874. That's the first one that I could find. Statistical Atlas of the U.S. And by the way, who is it that invented small multiples and when? Because it looks like we've been doing small multiples for a very long time. So anyway, side subject, I guess. The shape of the population pyramid is what's interesting to me. And so if you look at that, you think about the way that a population grows, you have an expanding population, which actually looks like a pyramid there, moving to a stationary population pyramid that doesn't really look like a pyramid anymore, right? And so as an aging population, if you have too many older generation folks or too few younger, and so that's what's interesting to me. I think that it's less about comparing the left side and the right side. I'm sure there's opportunities to do that, some examples, but it's interesting to see, especially in the United States, where you see the baby boomers, they move through aging and get older and older, and it changes the shape of the pyramid. And then you have sort of their reflection with the Gen Y generation, Gen X, Gen Y, and then it goes back down, right, to the Gen Z. So I think that's an interesting view. And so seeing a population shift over time, I think is interesting. Time series is one way that you could look at this and just say, okay, what does this look like over decades and how is the population changing? I think the other thing that's interesting is that you might think a population, even in the United States, we might go state by state thinking that a population is the same, but it actually does differ. You know, here you see sort of a normal population in California. I skipped one there. And you see that baby boomer generation move, you know, decades as it's moving from 1990 to 2010 to 2030. The whole shift changes for that state. But if you compare other states, you know, Maine, you can see that baby boomer population, but in Utah, you don't. It's much more like a pyramid shape. So I do find that the comparisons of these are helpful, super helpful. China is interesting. You know, there's policy that changes the demographic of it. So in something like this, maybe you are interested in comparing men to women. And so if you're doing that comparison, I think that's something to talk about with those pyramids, because we're not great at comparing like the left side to the right side, right? You can just kind of see that one side is bigger than the other. And it's useful if you don't need to be accurate in those comparisons. I find, you know, these are PhDs in North America. That certainly shows the shift in the data, right? And really shows that it's skewed. But if you're looking at the differences, that was the topic of our very first chart chat. And so Chris Love was listening. He was on that very first episode that we talked about it. And I think while we were talking about it, I think he started visiting in Tableau. I think he was probably doing it live. And probably by the end of the episode, he had a visualization. But shortly after, like the same day, he published this and said, if you are interested in looking at the differences between men and women in these populations, then he thought there might be a better way to look at it. And I thought that was a really beautiful view as well, that you could see again over time how that would shift, right? Where you would go from more men versus more women. I looked around for some other examples. I found this and I thought this was really interesting, where you can see the men and women side by side, but yet if it's over or under, they incorporated a darker color to show where those overages are. And so I thought that is an interesting view as well. And then if you're not interested in comparing the left side to the right side, and this was our argument the first time around, do you need it to be in left side, right side? Could you just show the total population? And so if you care about the generations and you want to see the generations move, or you're just looking at the overall total population, I think this is a great way of looking at that. And one of my favorites is Steve Wexler's looking at the population. Are you over the hill? It's a very sad viz for Steve and I on here, because we have to move the slider all the way up to the end. But I really love this. And I did find a couple others that I wanted to show you live, just to finish with here, just some beautiful ones. I wanted to show you one by Sean Miller that I really love. That is animated on Tableau Public, and we can toss that link in the chat window, but you can kind of see the population sort of moving over time and rolling. I thought that was a really good look. And another one by Jorge here. We can put that link in the chat window as well. I thought this was really cool. I would never normally put year on color for a sequential color scheme, but I do think this works and I really like it. The darker is the as the years progress, and it really shows the different shapes, comparing something like Japan to the United States, and you really see these different shapes of the population. So that's what I found when I was digging around. And so I guess, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think this would be great wall
And
art for a
proceed
demographer.
Amanda, just 1 second, and then please take over. Jeff confessed beforehand. He said, "Oh, I didn't really feel prepared, or that I had enough time to prepare for this." My goodness. So my apologies, Amanda. That is Jeff in not prepared mode.
Well, I had COVID this week, so I'm still testing positive for COVID. So sorry about the voice. And yes, I didn't feel like I was contributing to many of the discussions this week.
This to me looks like something that a series of these should go on a demographer's wall as like wall art in big gallery frames in terms of what that looks like. Jeff, I think one of the things that you kept saying at the very beginning, and I think it's related to a lot of the criticisms we often make of population pyramids, is talking about shape. And I think that as we talk about and look at shape of different population pyramids, thinking about the ways in which we are reading them as a shape and not as bars is a really important distinction. Because when we break down like more through a grammar of graphics type framework or mindset about the ways in which we're encoding data, the shape is made up of lots of individual bars or data points, but what we're really analyzing is shape, not individual bars. And that holds true for how demographers and public health folks, like myself, look at population pyramids to understand the overall shape of a population and then have mental models to compare back to. And so I do think that a lot of the root causes of the constraints, and Andy, you're going to take this down a different rabbit hole, I think, but of population pyramids is when you start taking away shape as the primary way you're encoding the data, you're starting to fulfill and answer different analytical questions. Even in some of the examples that you shared, where suddenly you're not breaking them apart as male and female and just looking at overall shapes of populations as one particular population group, that too takes away a level of analysis that I think is a little bit unfair.
I think that's true. So, Jeff, that's absolutely brilliant. I want to share some thoughts I have. Before I do, I just want to say hi to John Peltier. So I'm just going to gush a little bit about John. I used to be an Excel expert, and John Peltier was blogging about Excel before we even knew what blogs were. So he was like a Flurlage twin, but way back in the 90s. So John, you may not know, but you had a huge influence on my career, not only teaching me about Excel, but teaching me about how to be a teacher and content creator. So great to have you. Thanks.
Ditto. I've learned a lot of Excel from you.
Yeah. And you're still doing it, man. It's amazing. Anyway, so the thing that triggers me about population pyramids was based on, I wrote a blog post about this in 2012 and never published it. And then Randy Olson published a post very similar in 2017, just, coincidentally. But he was also triggered by this line from a Pennsylvania government website. And it said this classic line. It's like, a population pyramid is the best way to graphically illustrate this stuff. And as a chart chat viewer, that if you say to us the best way to show something, it's like, no. So as Jeff has said, the population pyramid is amazing. This isn't super accurate data, but we've got US here, and you can see the boomers going up, right? And we can compare this to Angola and see that's a very population dominated by young people as well, right? So Jeff has made out the case that we know, and Amanda said as well, that we know shapes. But do we not know shapes in other ways, right? So I guess my question to everybody on the show, type in comments, and to my chart chat compatriots here, is this chart, so this layout, what questions does this actually let us answer? This layout. What questions can we answer with this chart? Anybody?
We should all pause and let people reflect in the chat box, right, Andy?
Well, you can contribute
ideas here.
Yeah. I mean, your lack of answers is interesting, because to me, you can answer how many males or females are there at any age group. You can answer, is that age group for that gender bigger or smaller than the other age groups? And you can rightly see the shape of the entire population, right? So they are good questions. But as John said, he's always interested in comparing males and females. I think there was somebody else saying a comment there, right?
I can answer
Also-
questions. I can answer questions about fertility in a country based on the shape of the pyramid.
Yes, true. True. I'm also going to add a comment. Spill Graphics asked this comment. Well, should we not see them horizontally? So what are we taught in stats college? Which axis should the dependent variable go on? Steve?
That would probably be on the x-axis,
Yeah.
Andy.
Now, we know there are guidelines and no rules, but, oops, let's put this on the right. And now everyone's freaking out because this is a population pyramid, but it's just rotated. But I'm like, oh, this isn't right. This isn't right. But in a way, this is more statistical according to what we're taught at college and school. And here you go. John's question, are there more men than women? I have no idea, right? So the population pyramid limits you to not being able to answer that question. If you draw, and this is my biggest thing, if you draw this as a line, you can see the baby boomers here, male and female equal, but as time goes on, the men die off more quickly than the female, and you can see that age group go through. You can compare that to Angola and some of the African countries. They're very different. Is this not a shape that is just as powerful as the pyramid and yet also allows me to compare male and female instantly? Does this not add more than the pyramid adds, apart from the desire for us to see funky shapes?
No, it does not. Because if I'm an epidemiologist or a demographer or someone else, and you show me from a distance a sheet of population pyramid, now you might mislead me and put some other metric on it, but I would instantly recognize that those are population pyramids.
Yeah, I would jump in and say, why are we so focused on comparing men and women when they're almost always 50-50, right? Like it's just a few more women than men in almost any case, unless there's something weird going on like a one-child policy, right? So that, I think, is not the primary look when you look at it. It would be, is the population growing? Is the population, dying? Is it stagnant? Right. And that shape, right, I think, tells you that, doesn't it?
It does, if those are your questions. But what I'm saying is the things that the population pyramid hides, and when people say it's the best way, it's like, no, you are hiding things.
Andy, this one just kills me, though, because this is so overstating the delta between those two lines. Like, this makes it look like there's so many more women and so many more men, and that is not the case.
I know. So Angola, it's like, look how many more men there are in Angola, but actually it's only 100,000. I concede completely. This one hides loads of insight, but if difference is the prime thing you're looking at, that's not too bad. Right. Okay. Steve also talked about the total population. So yeah, you can stack the bars. Of course, with every stacked bar comes the challenge of who do you put at the bottom of the stack? Do you want the males so you can see them, compare the males more easily, or the females? I don't know. That's a challenge. What if your question is about ratios, gender ratios at different age groups? You've got no idea here. You could try this. At this point, this is when I realized my red and blue color choice for this demo was appalling, because all of your eyes and retinas are now burning, especially as I turn on the animation. So I apologize for the color choice. Let's not pick that apart, even though it's wrong. But the point is, each of these different views gives you slightly different insights. So when somebody tells you that the population pyramid is the best way to do something, as a chart chat viewer, there's no such thing as the best chart. Population pyramids are amazing, but they hide insights. So it ain't the best way. It's one way. That's my version of the quote. And you can continue ripping me apart now about the things I've got wrong.
Well, Amanda, I have a question for you. Is it that Andy, I thought that was terrific, and showing the alternatives and the animations and the presentation within your dashboarding tool of choice, that was a tour de force. You had said that, but I think you had said, Amanda, something about, yes, but I know how to read the shapes. I know how to read the pyramid, and I can see it from a mile away. And did I get that right? Because I have a follow-up question.
That's the general gist, sure.
Well, that's because that's the way you were taught, and that's what you're used to. And, thank God we're not teaching Fortran and COBOL as computer science any longer, but more modern things. Had you learned to interpret this differently, you may be able to have your cake and eat it too by, I can read the shape of these things and I can see the delta in some of these examples. So It is killing me that that's going to be the extent of my talking about this. I have thoughts on population pyramids. You can go to datarevelations.com, type in pyramid, and look up my thoughts. But Jeff, Amanda, Andy, any last thoughts before we move on to the next segment?
Well,
So I do
think
have one important example that I want to bring up, and I'll skip two. You gave me the opportunity to make slides, so I can't hold back from it. So population pyramids are valuable if you have mental models to read them. This comes back to audience, right? And we've talked today about like these different shapes, expansive pyramids where you see this shape, and if you know how to read them, you think high fertility, but also high mortality among younger populations, young and growing. If you see a constrictive pyramid, you see at the bottom there aren't a lot of young people. And you start to worry about what that means in terms of workforce and other things like that as you move forward. Or you see these kind of stationary pyramids that have low mortality and low fertility and slow growth. But we can add references, things like that. But sometimes the shape looks different. And I actually think this is a really important place to think about kind of where we have really extreme outliers of countries that have major events that disrupt the shape of a population pyramid. One example there is a chimney pyramid and what that looks like. Botswana ended up not looking quite like the projections they expected, but in countries that had a high incidence and high prevalence of HIV early on, population pyramids were actually used to try to visualize and communicate about the population that was missing. And I think that that's actually, when you start thinking about shape, one of the more powerful ways to think about using population pyramids is in a space where we're actually trying to highlight where someone or some groups of people might be missing. Here with the blue representing different deficits due to AIDS that continue to trickle down, because if there are fewer people in the older population, they're also not bearing children. And so as we think about the use of population pyramids, I mean, I think the recognizable shape is helpful. I think they're also useful when you kind of reimagine them in different ways. And this is dating back to projections from 2000. And I think the way in which it's not quite come to pass that Botswana looks the same way is a statement about the work that's been done to go ahead and advance science around HIV treatments, which is amazing. So I want to make a call out that on occasion, it can be useful for trying to say, this is why this pyramid shape is different from what I might have expected.
Jeff, you have any last thoughts on this and we can move on?
I just figured you'd want to talk about color.
Should we save that for the after party?
Oh, indeed. I forgot to mention that. As with every chart chat, we will have a Zoom meeting after this where you can weigh in your thoughts on this, your agreements or disagreements, brickbats, praise, whatever it is. We will have that URL available for you in a little bit. And by the way, blue and red are about to show up in the next example that we have. And I want to discuss the odyssey of the team coaching dashboard. This is a scenario that is going to make it into our next book, which is Dashboards That Deliver. The biggest difference between that book and the first one is that we are delving into the process. How did this thing get from design to development to deployment? And I can tell you, spoiler alert, Amanda's work on this has been absolutely brilliant. But let me start with showing you this. I keep calling them gems. They are gems. Here's this amazing work from Kevin Flaherlidge, who's got both design and analytical chops that are probably second to none. But interestingly, despite this being on the short list of the Information is Beautiful awards, this is not the dashboard that's going in the book, even though it was wildly successful. Over time, it morphed into this. Well, why? I just said it was wildly successful. I mean, why change anything? The dashboard was designed for a coach who is actually a soccer coach who was kind of thrust into leading a high school bowling team. And Kevin, as both a dashboard designer, a parent, and a really good bowler, stepped forward and said, you know, I can give the coach something that will allow him to make better decisions. And it did. And the team won more matches. Now, let me show you what the coach was using prior to Kevin's dashboard. He had sheets like this. And imagine a dozen of them showing you, hey, here is the performance of players over the last dozen matches. I defy you, unless you're a savant, to make any sense out of this and figure who's playing really well, who's on a cold streak, etc. So why did we change anything given the success of this? Well, the audience changed. If the audience for this dashboard were just high school bowling coaches, I don't think our book would sell a lot of copies because there just aren't that many high school bowling coaches out there. But we're thinking about the literally thousands of people who will be reading this book. And Kevin's dashboard can be used for so many things besides bowling. Think of any team and you have to monitor their performance, sales teams, technical support teams, and you need to see the overall performance and that of individuals. So hence the discussion of, hey, if we have those people in mind, how are we going to change these things? So let me show you a few things and some of the discussions we had around this. First, here's this really interesting technique. I'm so used to, hey, you want to highlight an individual versus everybody else, but Kevin came up with a mechanism for, I want to highlight a pair, two different people, and see how they're comparing with the rest of the team. By the way, I am now at the point where I think, Rob Richards must be a Republican. Riley Flaherty is a Democrat because the colors red and blue have been co-opted in the United States to mean these things. If not, if you're not political, you think blue is good, red is bad because in Western culture, that's been inculcated. It turns out, no, it's just the school colors. But we thought about this, and I gave some pushback thinking, hey, when I'm using a dashboard, I just want to click on, I want to see what that player does, know what that player does, what this person is doing, etc. And I wanted the ability to just click rather than going to a parameter control. So that was one item. Item two was this thing in the bottom right. This is the punchline. This is the thing, the major thing, the biggest thing, the most important thing that the coach is using to make decisions. Why is it going in the bottom right? And Kevin confessed that, he was more telling a story than putting that upper left, hey, here's the key thing that you need. Finally, these two pieces, they really need to go together. They need to be seen as two pieces that answer two critical questions at the same time. And this particular text table that's over here, it's hard to see where the numbers are high, the numbers are low. It's just a bunch of numbers that are nicely formatted, and we only see half of the matches. So instead, it morphed into this, which is not as colorful, and we had a lot of debates about the colors of the highlight table. But first and foremost, there's a highlight table, not a text table, and the degree and intensity of the grays that are there are showing, hey, the darker the gray, the better the individual performed. Here is what is in fact a brilliant marginal histogram. Anyone who follows me knows that when I see a highlight table or a scatter plot, I think I'd like to see a marginal histogram. Well, that bottom right piece has now been moved to as an extension of the highlight table. So you highlight, you can see for all the players what their average score is, what their range of scores is, and at the moment we're highlighting Riley Flaherty, who happens to be Kevin's son, and he's a badass bowler. Finally, these two pieces really, well, not finally, penultimately, these two pieces need to go together, as I can see trends on the top, and I can see with the gaps who didn't bowl for a match, but it's hard to see the trends versus the bottom, where I can see that the player highlighted was kind of volatile at the beginning and then really hit his stride. He's just slightly below his average or slightly above the average. That's hard to see in the top graphic. And finally, the least important item, which is the top 10 individual game scores, are relegated to the bottom right. And this came with Kevin being open to it and the four of us discussing, hey, are these the best positions? How should this be used? By the way, there are actually 3 dashboards that equip the coach, and 2 of them have legs beyond just bowling capabilities. So you're going to see the change in that as well. And the process, first, the process that was involved in helping the coach and parents and engaged students, and the process that went from how we would take this as a really great coaching dashboard to make it something that can be used in other places. And to kind of give you a sense, this is not the Slack discussions or email. These are just the comments that went into the Word document that we're going back and forth and discussing, no, I think it should be presented this way, not that way. And people ask, how is it that 4 people, and in this case, the dashboard designer, Kevin, 5 people, came to a consensus, and all of us have different ways of articulating this, but we had a common goal, and this is the way I look at it. For the largest number of people, provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. And the largest number of people for your target audience, and the least amount of effort we're talking about for the audience. You, as the creator of the dashboard or the visualization, you may have to work furiously hard, but it should be as easy as possible for your audience to glean insight and possibly feeling as well. And the collaboration has been great. I want to express my views on collaboration. It isn't me saying red, you saying blue, and us agreeing on purple. That's compromise. Collaboration is when we make something together that is better than what either of us or what all of us separately would have made. So I'm going to transition in a moment to, I look at my colleagues as sparring partners, people that I want them to give me pushback. I want them to say, no, I think there are better ways to do this. Have you considered this? Have you considered that? And we're going to get into probably our most fractious, if that's the right word, sparring that I've had in the 8 years when we first started the first book and now this book. But before we do, we'll transition to that in a moment. But any thoughts on the bowling dashboard, the coaching dashboard, the team performance dashboard? Andy?
Yeah, nothing really to add to what you've already said about design and functionality. But the thing that I've loved about writing that chapter, and I hope will come out when the book comes out and everybody gets a chance to read it, is I think we thought, well, it's a Ken Flerledge dashboard, so we know it's great. It's about bowling, so that's a nice light topic.
Did you say Ken? It's Kevin Flerledge.
Yeah, Ken. Oh my God. sorry. It's a Flerledge dashboard, so we know it's well designed, and it's about bowling, which is a light topic. So it'll be an easy chapter to write. And of course, it turned out because Kevin is also passionate and helpful and caring, it became this massive rabbit hole. I was writing my final comments on the chapter this morning. We hopefully finished the draft, and I'm looking at. I'd still change another 10 things. It's like we have a deadline to hit, so it's been a great collaboration.
Jeff or Amanda? Any thoughts that you'd like to add to this?
I think it's also great collaboration piece. I think it's a great example of where you can see some of the simplicity helping with some of the analytical goals. But for me, it highlighted a lot of the key things about layout. I think in the iterations on this chapter, and you called attention to that too, that I think we oftentimes index on what are the different charts we have. And as long as we just fit them all on the page, they'll effectively give people the information they need. And it really is a masterclass in walking through and thinking about how to recombinate and change how people glean more insight more quickly based on the positioning and layout and alignment of those charts, which is oftentimes really what takes an okay dashboard that has the stuff there if you want to find it, to something that really feels like an analytical product that you can use to dive in and answer questions. And so as people perhaps get to the point of reading the book, I hope that as people read the book, they will see some of those examples of it not just being about chart choice or color selection, but really about kind of optimizing those other really important pieces around layout and organization.
I want to amplify that and say that I love that we put the punchline and made it a marginal histogram next to the highlight table. And Amanda, it was you who said, oh, we need to pair, or I think it would be better if we pair the highlight table and put the line chart below. By the way, I thought that was going to be a 10-hour chapter writing, and it was about a 50-hour chapter writing, and it isn't done yet. So I hope people appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears, to quote Wilson Churchill, Churchill, and not the great group from the late 60s and 70s. All right. I think we're ready to move on. And Andy, your passion project, going back to the first book, why don't you take it? And then I have what I hope will be an engaging and interesting counterpoint to it.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. First of all, sorry, Kevin. I mean, I've literally read your name 100 times in that chapter, and I still get it wrong. So sorry about that.
You gave an interesting piece, Kevin, around where do we use first names versus referring to people by last name in the book? Because pluralage or even K pluralage was not going to work in this chapter.
Yeah.
Winston Churchill. There we go. As opposed to Kevin and Ken Churchill.
All right. Moving on. So I am interested to know, in what I'm about to tell you all, am I on my own? Are you team Andy, or are you team Steve, or are you somewhere team in the middle? Spilled Graphics, you asked this question. Anybody else find the word dashboard has been overkilled? The answer to that question is a chapter in the new book, which I've had fun writing, and this section somewhat belies it. So in the first book that came out in 2017, each of us in the end had a chapter which was deleted, right? So there is a director's cut of the book which will never see the light of day. And we all had a chapter removed for various reasons. But the one I wrote was about a dashboard from Crisis Text Line. Crisis Text Line is an organization that does counseling to people who are in dire need, essentially suicide risk. And they, through text messages, SMS, WhatsApp, they try and literally pull people back from the brink. So they do amazing work, really important work, and they have to work fast. So they need to be able to see their KPIs and their metrics really, really quickly with as minimal interruption to their flow of work as possible. And I think what Bob Philbin did at Crisis Text Line was amazing. Here is the dashboard. Now, you might look at this and go, Andy, that looks like Slack. It does look like Slack. It is Slack. It is text delivered by a bot on demand or at regular intervals into a text-based message. Right. So the question we asked ourselves, and I've asked many people since, is it a dashboard? I'll type yes or no what you think right now. I know what my chart chat chums think. So in the end, this chapter did not make the light of day, and that was fine. We had plenty of great examples. You know, all the other scenarios are really good. And I will concede this one pushes the envelope somewhat because there's no charts, there's no indicators. It's just text. It's ASCII codes, right? It's ASCII text characters. Mark, I can see you're already on my side with sure. So there's something of a disclaimer there. A dash that looks like a sticky note. Well, I'll take the sticky note is just because I added a yellow on it. This is what it looks like. So it's not really a sticky note. But what was it that I think Steve in particular objected to? Well, as I interpreted what he was saying to me, and I'm sure he is going to rebut and rephrase what I say in a moment, he was like, but Andy, we can do better because we're visualizers. We can make these come to life visually, right? There's no point just showing numbers when we can make charts. Steve might be sitting there squirming. I'll let you come back in a minute, Steve. So I've thought over 6 years, what could I do to make Steve happy? And I tried to do this on Sunday.
Pursuit, Andy. Thank you.
And it ended up in a very, very long fractious thread. So I don't think I've made Steve happy. But I was like, what could we add in a text dashboard to make this a bit more visual? Yeah, I see that comment. I'm going to ignore what you're all saying in comments. So I thought, okay, what if we use the power of text-based forms? And now in Slack, you can use ASCII codes. You can also bring in custom emojis. What if you just visualize which of these KPIs are up or down? I didn't like that. The original one was too saturated. I tried to soften the red or green to make it a bit more visual. And then Amanda said, well, look, why not only encode the metrics that need attention? Now, so here it's just like all the other KPIs are on target, and these are the ones that aren't. I say this is a really powerful dashboard for a few reasons. First, I assume the people who get these numbers know whether these numbers are good or bad and what action they should take. So they can very rapidly identify which numbers need action. Second, it's delivered on demand in text in the flow of work. It's low code. It requires very little in the way of platform infrastructure, and it's delivered in a way that's really, really fast to read. I am a huge fan of text-only dashboards. And there I'm going to stop and see what Steve has to say, and I'm going to read the comments and decide what you all think about me.
Okay. If you'd be kind enough to stop sharing for a moment, and we can. So let's point out where Andy and I are in total agreement, which is the information is what people need, when they need it, and where they need it. You know, it's right there. This is a classic definition of a performance management system. Learning at the moment of need. So, and I think that's a dashboard. You just need to convince me that we can't do better than that. So you said, oh, it's low code, it's easy. So here's my take on this, my dear sparring partner. Let me tell you a little bit about Andy. Here is Andy doing what he is best known for. Brilliant, erudite presenter. I will never, at least to an American audience, be able to match him because he has the wonderful British accent. Here is Andy in his natural habitat, you know, enrapturing thousands of people. He's going to show Florence Nightingale visualization, Jon Snow, Charles Minard, something that is really, oh my gosh, because of the way this thing is visualized, people are going to see and understand it to a different degree. And I just don't buy you showing this to a corporate boardroom or thousands of people and going, and as you can clearly see, look how amazing this is. So, of course, rather than just criticize, I had to think, well, what is it that I don't like about this? Well, why is that 80% bad? Why is the 71% bad? Are there certain thresholds? Where should we be, etc.? I'm not saying what I proposed as an alternative is the be all end all, but come on, we're about data visualization. And hey, the blue means the metrics are where we want them to be. The orange is where we're falling below. And how far below are we falling? If there's a question about, yeah, but is that going to fit into Slack? Yes, it fits into Slack and is eminently readable. So Andy's argument is it's compact and it's easy. Andy, please have a seat. I have a few questions for you. Okay.
I have a few answers before you even get to the questions, Steve, but come on.
All right. How long did it take you to create this?
About 20 minutes.
Wow, that's a long time. Now, was it manual or were you reading it from some system?
Well, in this case, I was just literally typing it. So this is I have not encoded this as a genuine dashboard. These are wireframes, prototypes, Steve.
But you're saying, Mr. Cotgrave, that you assume that it would be kind of easy to integrate with the back-end database and have these things automatically appear inside Slack. Do you know for a fact that's the case?
Yes.
Okay. That it's easier than including a chart. Also, why are you using red and green? Why not colorblind friendly colors?
These are CVD friendly colors. I tested them.
Really?
I did.
I'm surprised. I mean, with the arrow going up and down, I think you guys.
And yes, it's still the
okay,
color is
the arrow is going up and down. So here is my question. You know, did you integrate and automate this? And you're saying that it could be. I believe I need convincing that it is no harder to integrate. And did you just take over my
I
screen?
did, because I have an answer to that question. So in order to integrate this, I thought you might come up with this, Steve.
You just took over my screen.
I did take over your screen. Well, I'm asking you a question, right? You need a database, a coder, a server, a charting tool, money, time, and then ongoing maintenance in order to implement this. And this isn't just in Slack. To do this in Teams or deliver charts to anywhere where there is a text-based chat interface. To implement this, you don't need to pay a license for a charting tool, to learn how to use a charting tool, to set up the data in the charting tool, to maintain it and create the code that calls the APIs that go to that charting tool. And thus you need a lot less money, time, and maintenance. Therefore, this information in my mind is more than good enough and solves for people who don't have the privilege or ability to pay for licenses of expensive charting tools. They can do it in Python library.
So Andy, you can't create that chart with Python code?
Well,
and have ChatGPT do it for you automatically?
Yeah, you can do it through Python code, but you still need to know Python code, whereas here you only need to know ASCII text.
Jeff, would
you
it
may
be...
have the screen back. Steve, you may have the screen back.
Oh, thank you.
I will give
Thank
you
you for letting me take my screen back. So my question about integrating and automating, or is it done manually? You know, in which case, if someone's copying and pasting the stuff, it's no harder to copy and paste this in. But I need convincing that with ChatGPT and automatic code generators, that it is no harder to create that chart on the right than it is to create the ASCII chart. So, and you seem to be conceding that the thing on the right is better.
Right, hang on. I'm taking over again. Let me address your chart. Right. So, I thought you might bring this up,
I'm not
Steve.
saying it's great.
I thought about it. Right. So, here's the challenge. When we draw the chart like this, we are looking at 4 bars. Well, we're looking at 8 bars, 8 pairs of bars across 4 different rows. And so naturally, I think our eyes try to compare each one of these bars against the other. Oh no, wait time. This orange one is less than these. But that's actually a spurious, irrelevant comparison because we're not comparing the number of counselors to the number of texters. So that's one issue with this implementation, which I will concede you did as a mock-up in about 20 minutes while furiously typing and trying to shoot me down. The second thing is the nature of this bar. The only metrics we have are whether 267 is above or below target. So the only thing that will ever change on a bar that is above target is the distance from the gray. So in this case, these bars will always fully extend to the right-hand edge of the pane, and the gap between the gray and the blue will change. And I would conjecture that that actually isn't really adding much visual pop or value to the solution. So that, my friend, together with the cost, is why I'm team text for this.
I don't think there's any additional cost if you automatically generate the Python code. And if you employ someone who is better than I am, we can go. Oh, Amanda is coming to Andy's rescue. Amanda is always team Andy. Go ahead, Amanda.
I want to raise the point about people's level of data literacy and graphicacy and reading charts, because I think that's the core crux of part of what you're getting to, Andy, is what extra insight people are going to glean if they sit and study that chart. But I don't think anyone in Slack, when they're served up insights, wants to sit and study a chart. And I think there's been some great comments in the chat below that highlight the ways in which people don't know how to read charts still. They're still not familiar. But I've shown bullet charts and overlapped bar charts to rather data-informed clients who consider themselves as such, and they have to be talked through how to read them. And so I don't think that chart type is intuitive as to someone who's not a professional chart looker-atter. And there's a familiarity. I know we're back to familiarity again There's a familiarity of just reading something out in text and seeing little emojis that feels like it's something I can do if I'm not a data person. It feels like some way I can read that information. And maybe it's okay that you're reading those 8 numbers. It's not that many in order to go ahead and glean some insight. So I think that tools like this are a great way to go ahead and introduce and get people engaged in and excited about maybe just having access to information, and you're meeting someone where they're at. And that was the whole point, Steve, of the new book is how do we focus more on even more on the stories about how people got to what they made and how there isn't one best answer, but rather the it depends of the different chart choices and design choices people make in different contexts.
I think
I'm team this has a purpose and a use case as long as it has the automation piece. I actually think that's the key part of the dashboard component. If this is just something someone is writing into Slack each morning because they have to go find the numbers from 8 different places, that's different.
No.
If you can build the automation component of it, to me, part of dashboards are also thinking about automating or semi-automating those insights to reduce the amount of time you're spending. So that would be the other piece of this that I think is an important crux on, is it a dashboard?
Let me go, and then you can weigh in that I think that is a fair point, but I hate to think that we are not working to lift people up. Oh, they don't know how to read charts, so we're not going to provide charts. We're trying to increase people's data fluency. I am not saying for a second that what I put together was, this is a masterful chart that everyone will understand instantly. I just think we can do at least a little better than just text-based stuff. So, folks, there will be 3/4 of a page in the chapter. I will have the way we work in this is someone owns the chapter, makes their case, but each of us have the opportunity to say, put in a little commentary. And you've kind of gotten a little preview of what my commentary is. Amanda, I think that it is a very fair point. If you present this stuff and they look at it and go, I don't know how to read this. I don't have time to ask somebody how to read this. I'm not going to bother to read it, is an excellent point. I think we can do better than just text. So
I'm curious though, Steve, we still, even in our chat threads, because Jeff, tapped out to be down with these. I never heard what Jeff's take on this was. And you've been remarkably silent, Jeff, this whole entire
Jeff
time.
was very sensible and kept down.
I woke up from COVID and I thought somebody died. I was looking at my Slack channel, like, what happened? I don't know what blew up on my phone, and it turned out that was this discussion here. I would be lying to say that in previous life we didn't have a bunch of daily reports that looked like Andy's email. I mean, instead of using Slack, we had an email report that went out to the owners of the company literally every hour with some numbers, and they watched it like a stock ticker, and everybody thought it was crazy, but that's how they consumed it. That's what they wanted to do. So I think it's valid. I'm probably more in Andy's camp here, I have to say, because I think that it will take more effort and time, Python code or Tableau or whatever, to maintain it. And text is easy, right? It's just like, oh, you can put that in a text message, an email, a Slack channel. It can be right where the person is. So I think there is some value to that.
I still need convincing that what Andy proposes is quote unquote easy. Andy, you may be further on moving the needle on this one, and I am not going to stubbornly stick to my ways. I just think, can't we do better?
The thing we love about you is you always stubbornly stick to your ways. That's why you've been an amazing collaborator for 10 years. So I don't believe that last sentence.
I have just said that I am open to being wrong, and I've been wrong on many occasions. But not when choosing the collaborators to work with on this book. So let me...
and Andy's not going to be at the after. You're not even going to be at the after party here.
I am actually,
due
to circumstances. I'm going to be there. I'm going to continue it.
All right.
Yeah.
Jeff, I was hoping you would come to my, A2 Brutus, A2 Brutus. So, hey, let's discuss what's coming up. And I've got some stuff here, but I know my colleagues do as well. First, OMG, we have the great Georgia Lupi, who is going to be our guest on October 23rd. If you don't know who she is, you are in, well, just look her up. For goodness sake, she's in, the Museum of Modern Art and has such an enlightened way of looking at data visualization. So that will be on Wednesday, October 23rd. If you want to know, how do I make sure I find out about that? Well, one thing is sign up for our friggin' newsletters so that you'll never miss a chart chat. But also, if you go to chartchat.live, not only can you see previous episodes, and this one will be up there shortly, but in the upper right corner, you will see a place to register for the next chart chat. And that one will be with Georgia Lupi. Also, this is a pretty spirited chart chat. I suspect the after party will be fairly spirited as well. So please join us at bigpic.me/after. Me and Andy and Jeff and Amanda. And thank you, Mark, for saying the best chart chat ever. And there have been a lot of them. So, it's not like there have been 3 and it's the best one. This is number 54. Please join us. We would love to have you there. I'm going to stop sharing at the moment. And Andy, Amanda, or let's start with Amanda.
Sorry.
Let's go with Andy.
Oh, sorry. I start first. Paul, your wife just caught you watching Chart Chat. There are clearly a lot worse things that she could have come home and caught you watching. So glad that we could be part of that joy for your wife. I'm just going to say we've got Data Fam Europe. If you're in Europe and you want to come hang out and do Tableau nerdery and geekery and just be a part of the Data Fam, we'll be in London on the 11th to 12th. In November, we're announcing registration details in the next 10 days. So come join us.
All right, I will add on my side, we have our annual State of Data Viz survey that DVS is doing, the Data Viz Society. If you don't know, the annual survey captures insights and information about everything from the use of different tools and tech stacks within data visualization to details about jobs, job titles, salary, everything else that you might want to or choose to share. The data is shared in a public but very rolled up, anonymized version, providing summary tables of that data. And the data is available on our GitHub repo if you are interested in analyzing past years. We always do an annual challenge looking at the different data sets as they come out from each year's survey. The survey is live right now, open through the end of September. We are super excited to have hopefully up over 1,500 respondents this year. That's our target. And I would say if you are questioning if you should respond to this survey, if you are taking the time to watch Chart Chat and you've gotten to the end of this episode, I think you should take the survey. I think you qualify. It is for data viz hobbyists, data viz designers full-time, and people who use data viz in their work alike. So please go ahead and check that out. I'll put the link into the chat below.
Well, just to show you what a good sport I am, I could not open the after party, take my ball, and just go home. But I will. I will take a little early exit to set up the after party. And this was just delightful, as was the discussions in Slack about this 3/4 of a page, as was moving the focus of the Kevin Flaherledge coaching dashboard, as was the discussion of population pyramids. What an enlightened and engaging time. Thank the 3 of you so much. I am going to start the after party. Hope to see you all there. Take care, folks.
Bye now.